Hello friends, we are the Yom Rishon school and today we will illustrate the Jewish diaspora, or the exile and movement of Jewish people throughout history. With the help of these kids, I will summarize over 2,000 years of history, during which the Jewish people spread across the globe. Are you ready? So who are the Jews and where do they come from? The descendants of Abraham, the Jews originated as an ethnic and religious group in the land of Judea. Abraham himself was a frequent traveler, journeying from southern Mesopotamia to northern Mesopotamia to Eretz Canaan, then to Egypt, then back to Eretz Canaan. Crazy guy. Over the past 2,000 years, Jews have traveled all across the globe. Although they are great travelers, it really wasn't their choice. The Great Journey began in 70 AD, when the Roman Empire destroyed the Second Jewish Temple in Jerusalem and forced the Jews out of their land. Fortunately, many Jewish communities, prominently Alexandria, Sura, Carthage, Pumbedita, and Antiochia, and Rome, have been established over 300 years prior to the exile, so the Jews had many places to go. A substantial amount of Jewish communities were erected along the African coast, in modern-day Tunisia, Morocco, and Egypt. Since 7 AD, these areas were controlled by Muslims, and although Jews were considered to be second-class citizens, they did not face any harsh prejudice from the Muslim courts and society. The Jews worked mainly as merchants and craftsmen, and dressed and lived in Muslim-style homes, but still observed Jewish tradition. The Jews always learned, prayed, and celebrated Shabbat. The quickly expanding Jewish communities caused many Jews to adapt to their new surroundings, and over time the Jews of North Africa looked nothing like their Middle Eastern ancestors. For example, look at these Jewish brides from Yemen. Does this look anything like the traditional Jewish attire that we know of? Interesting, right? There are also many dark-skinned Jews living in Ethiopia, but we will get to that later. While a large part of Jews fled to Africa, many Jews also fled to Europe. There, they were surrounded by a large Christian population, where they often faced prejudice and persecution. Whilst in Europe, Jews also started to adapt to the new culture, and soon it was difficult to distinguish a Jew from a non-Jew, which greatly angered the church. So naturally, the church enforced a special dress code on the Jews. By the 13th century, a majority of European churches enforced strict laws which forced Jews to wear certain symbols, in order to distinguish them from the rest of society. The symbols differed from country to country, and oftentimes they were pretty random. For example, look at this red and white circle, and yellow ring badge. Out of all these ridiculous clothes, my favorite must be the silly pointy hats that the Jews were forced to wear in Germany. Just look at this. Would you want to wear this to school? Or work? I certainly wouldn't. Even with all the persecutions that persisted in their lives, the Jews were known for being great merchants, craftsmen, cartographers, and moneylenders. And as all other Jews, European Jews also spent a lot of time learning, praying, and celebrating Shabbat. European rulers soon began to dislike the rapidly growing Jewish population, and persecution eventually led to another exile. First from England, then from Italy, and following the Inquisition in Spain, some moved towards the east, and others moved towards the west. These opposite routes were essentially the first steps in the creation of Russian and American Judaism, but we will discuss this concept in a later episode. 2,000 years of traveling caused Jews to appear in all parts of the world, from Argentina to the US, from Russia to China. Jews have always seemed to be present in most civilizations. But what about the land of Israel? Did the Jews ever try and go back to their Holy Land? They did. A small amount of Jews always lived in the land of Israel, and after their expulsion in 1492, many Sephardic, or Spanish Jews, began to settle in Sfat, where aside from certain taxes, they did not face much persecution from the Ottoman Empire. They spent a lot of time interpreting the words of the Bible, better known as the practice of Kabbalah. Towards the end of the 19th century, many rich, non-religious Jews began to settle on the coast of the Mediterranean, where they bought and cultivated large areas of sandy and arid land, which initially was not ideal for farming of any kind. The large influx of rich Jews created the settlements of Tel Aviv, Herzliya, Petah Tikva, and Rishon LeZion. Beginning in the wake of the 20th century, the birth of Zionism caused many Jews to begin their return to the Holy Land, where they also helped cultivate land and industrialize cities and settlements. In the 1920s, Jews began to form farming settlements called kibbutzes in the Israeli Valley, as well as along the coast. The kibbutz lifestyle is based on agriculture, and settlers worked and shared the crops with each other, creating large and strong communities throughout the land. After World War II, the State of Israel was created in 1948, and Jews from all around the world began to make their way back to their rightful land. Now, remember I mentioned the Jews of Ethiopia? Good, because their story is extremely interesting. Believed to be the descendants of King Solomon and Queen Sheba, the dark-skinned Jews of Ethiopia kept up with their Jewish traditions for over 3,000 years, despite the numerous regime changes in the area. By the late 20th century, it was dangerous for Jews to stay in Ethiopia due to rising discrimination and prejudice. Fortunately, Israel had a plan. Operation Solomon was a covert Israeli military operation to airlift Ethiopian Jews to Israel from May 24th to May 25th of 1991. In a hectic 36 hours, 35 Israeli planes transported 14,325 Ethiopian Jews to Israel. The operation was so intense that the participants broke the Guinness World Record for the most passengers flown on an aircraft when 1,122 Ethiopians managed to escape in a Boeing 747. Even though we have our own Jewish state, the Jewish journey is not over yet. Remember the kids that helped me make this video? Their families also have very interesting journeys, which you can see right here.